As the World Economic Forum heats up in Davos, what direction will the talks take this year? And biking from Benin to China in 360 days. We've got an exclusive interview with a man who used his bike trip to raise money for a local community in Western Africa. How did his cycling journey transform his impressions of Africa and its relationship with China? Welcome to The Point. I'm Liu Xin. The World Economic Forum kicked off in the Swiss village of Davos on Tuesday with the theme of creating a shared future in a fractured world. With the International Monetary Fund's latest data forecasting a positive outlook for the global economy in 2018, which topics will dominate this year's discussions? What message will China deliver this year? And how will U.S. President Donald Trump sell his America First message in an increasingly globalized world? Joining me for the discussion in the studio today are Joerg Wuttke, former president of the EU Chamber in China, and Charles Liu, the founder of Hao Capital. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. The theme sounds very interesting, creating a shared future in a fractured world. Two key words here. One is a shared future, the other is a fractured world. First of all, what is this fractured world? What are we talking about here? Joerg.
I mean, the U.S. started anti-dumping investigations today, this week, raising the border prices on products from China. That is the fractured world. It is sort of disrupting the tendency of having more smooth supply chains. Globalization stands for opening up the borders, and the fractured world basically stands for a world where populism is forcing the leaders to raise borders.
Mm-hmm. And Charles, your take?
I would absolutely, on a macro basis, that's absolutely true. But on a micro basis, you have fractured world within countries as well. No matter what President Donald Trump does or says, there is a 37% support of him, where maybe equal number are dead against him. So the polarization of the world within countries is becoming quite serious as well, especially in Europe and the United States.
Yeah. When I'm reading this theme, I can't help thinking of China's idea of creating a global community of shared future for humankind. Do you have that impression, Joerg? What are they trying to advocate here? Or what are they trying to draw people's attention here?
I mean, it is a Davos summit unlike others. Brexit happened, Donald Trump was elected, border prices of goods go up. There is really time that the elite thinks about it. How do we stop this, and how do we turn the tide in order to go back to better globalization? Because the former globalization story was too much bordered on what Justin Trudeau said yesterday, greed. And only a few benefit, and many were left out, and then these people, as Charles said, vote for President Trump. So in a way, I think it is sort of wake up people. Last year's speech by Xi Jinping actually was touching upon this by exactly saying there has to be leadership, borders have to be open. But again, also China has to ask itself, did we do enough in order to make that happen?
So it's everybody having to ponder on that question. Are we making it possible for us to share this future together? Joerg, you mentioned the speech President Xi mentioned last year. These words still linger in our ears. Charles, what kind of message is China likely to send out this year?
I think the message will be consistent, because it is a strategic view of the Chinese government. When we talk about strategy in the Chinese context, we're talking about decades, not until the next election cycle. The strategic vision is that it is one world, it is the same environment for the entire world, it is the same productive capacity for the entire world, and free trade and so on and so forth benefits all. So I think what the Chinese government, or President Xi Jinping and the core of the Chinese government has really decided on is to promote shared future, because so much of what we live by or live on today is shared, especially with internet.
Yeah, and yet this imbalanced development
Right.
is not just a problem that China is facing with, basically around the world. And I understand it's also why so many people are angry about the fallout of globalization, because they have not, or they feel they have not benefited
Well, the numbers that came out was very clear. Among the Western countries, 82% of the profit last year, 2017, went to the top 1%.
So really, indeed, that's a very important message we have to share. Now, China's stance has been persistent. What about the world? What kind of changes have we experienced in the past world which could possibly give rise to some new discussions? Yeah.
Well, I guess that everybody's also not only in the gloomy mood, but also celebrations happening, because it was a very good year for the global economy. We were lucky that the big countries were doing well. China did exceptionally well at 6.9% GDP growth. Europe did very well. These problems with Greece are solved. So in a way, there will also be a little bit of celebration going on. But clearly, soul-searching happens about a possible trade war, US-China. Then is India really going to open up? Modi basically gave a very similar speech to President Xi. But again, is there going to be delivery? And then the fracture. I mean, China will be not just delivering a speech, but will also be subject between the gap between promises and delivery, and in particular on the internet side, where China is global champion in payment on IT services, at the same time closes off itself from internet pages that might be of interest to the ordinary people. So in a way, China will also be on the agenda, but I'm sure that Liu He has a similar message. As Charles said, the Chinese representative will have a similar message to the president last year.
Right. From your perspective, it's understandable that you raise these kind of concerns, Charles. What is the Chinese counter-argument to this kind of concern? And we're not just talking about the inavailability of certain internet pages. Also, certain sectors have been off-limit to foreign enterprises. How do you look at this issue?
I think it's a gradual process, because in the sector that I'm in the financial sector, it's been gradually opening up, including 2 years ago when they opened up third-party payment system where Visa and the others could come. But I'm not sure Visa would be able to compete with mobile payment. So, you know, they could come.
We've already turned the page.
That's right, we're 2 generations ahead. But in terms of internet pages, so opening up and having to go over the wall with VPN and so on and so forth, there are 2 sides to the issue. China is a very big country and very complicated country. On the internet, you see what in the West is called fake news. We have very elaborate development of stories that's promoted. So on the one hand, I think it'd be good to keep control of it. But on the other side, I think the Chinese netizens, ourselves included, it's a question of how much individual rights do you want relative to stability and order in society.
And the collective good.
Yeah, collective stability and order in society.
Yeah, it's been a perpetual discussion, and I think it will be going on. But I think...
we can cite a very simple example. We joke about how Pony Ma Hua-teng, knows exactly where we are and what we're doing because we use WeChat. But the convenience of WeChat is such, I think most Chinese are very pragmatic. The convenience that it brings about gives up something in terms of privacy. So it's a balance.
On the other hand, there are issues where it's very difficult to talk about a balance now, which is China's debt crisis. A lot of people have been talking about that. Do you foresee, Joerg, that this issue is going to capture quite a bit of a spotlight in Davos? And do you think China is will be able to manage this crisis?
Well, I guess that among all the problems the leaders and the elite will discuss in Davos, the debt burden of China will possibly not be high on the agenda. Possibly it should be, because China itself talks about the debt burden and the kind of headwinds it will create. But first of all, 2017 was just such a good year in business terms that the debt burden sort of is out of people's minds. In as far as if there's now going to be default, there will be major shock, and then China will be in the newspapers again, as it was in summer 2015. The debt burden is a problem. The government has been trying to deal with this. It leaves room for problems. It's not going to be a smooth process, but what shall they do? The debt burden is so high, 280% of GDP. It has to be diffused. It will slow the economy, but we can only hope for the sake of the global economy that it's done in a smooth manner.
Well, after all, it is more or less a domestic topic, I believe, whereas this is such an international occasion, and one of the highlights this year is definitely U.S. President Donald Trump's expected speech. Finally, he's able to go where he found the money, and this is going to be the first time that a sitting U.S. president will be attending the Davos in 18 years. Charles, why do you think he chose to go to this place, which has been the symbol of globalization?
It's he's very big into getting into the media, I think. His tweets and a lot of things that he says and does are part of his attempt to capture the media. Well, he's been very good at it.
He needs to be where the spotlight is.
That's right. And here is the gathering of the entire elite force that he was doing the campaign trail dead set against. And he loves a challenge like that. I don't think it's his advisors that told him, oh, you should go.
But what is he going to talk about here? Do you think he's going to be consistent or America first?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. You don't launch a trade skirmish. It's not a war. A trade skirmish before you go, if you're going to talk about something else.
Well, I guess it's, frankly, from the president's point of view, a very smart move. He goes into the lion's den. He stood for America first. He stands for the losers of globalization. And he meets the elite that actually was standing for globalization. And I guess his agenda is like, I'm not afraid of taking these guys on. After all, we have elections, midterm elections in November.
His base will love it.
Oh, his fans will love it. And he will certainly get the message across. And 1 or 2 days later, he has State of the Union. He has a double whammy to prove to his constituency on a major platform, this is what I did in the first 12 months. It's definitely, as Charles said, going to be America first. So the anti-Davos speaks at Davos.
So is it going to do any good to the world to have this kind of open debate? I mean, we have some serious work to do, you know.
More fracturing.
More fracturing, you think?
That's what it will be. It will be more fracturing.
And
I guess that it is important that he gets his message across. I hope that he has a chance to listen to a couple of people. But if fracturing is the word. You know, is the U.S. going to pull out of NAFTA? An obvious great free trade zone. Is that going to happen? Possibly he will do it very, very soon, which is going to be bad for all countries in Gulf, Mexico, Canada. And also, I mean, Davos is going to be having a topic is Brexit. You know, you have Theresa May speaking, you have the business speaking. I guess the topic of fractured world economy is going to be on top of the agenda, and who else stands for fractured economy and political division? It's Donald Trump.
Let's keep a close watch on his speech and the reaction from the rest of the world. Many thanks our two guests, Charles Liu, the founder of Hao Capital, and Joerg Wuttke, former president of the European Chamber of Commerce. And you have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. I'll be back right after this short break. In September 2016, Yuan Jianlei set off on a 16,000-kilometer journey from the West African country of Benin, where he was volunteering, all the way back to his hometown in East China's Zhejiang province on a bicycle. After sharing his story and raising money back in China, this young man will return to Benin to help the community where he used to live. Why did he decide to pedal his way back to China? What did he gain for himself and come to understand about China-Africa cooperation? I'm pleased to be joined by Mr. Yuan in our studio to share his stories with us. Mr. Yuan, welcome to the show. First of all, biking back to Eastern China from Western Africa. That is, I understand, about 16,000 kilometers. Not exactly the most common way home for most people. What inspired you to ride so far from Benin to Ningbo?
Actually, I want to see the world, you know, and to live the story and tell my own stories. So that's the very beginning motivation for me. And since I have this opportunity, and I mean the right place and right time, so just do it.
Mm-hmm. Did you tell your friend and family about this plan, and what was their reaction?
Yeah, and they were a little bit worried about that, and but at least they don't against it. So I'm really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the journey covered 16 countries and took you almost 1 year, 360 days. Tell us about the most challenging moment. Did you ever reach a point where you thought it's time to hop on a plane, or you couldn't do it anymore?
Yeah, there's several times that I'm thinking, what's the meaning of cycling in such tough situation? And there's one time when I was cycling in Mauritania, and because I have 3 days left for the visa, so I have no solution. I have to take the world's longest train in Mauritania. So I stayed overnight in the open air wagon, and the second day when I woke up, and I see my face covered with dust. So I was wondering, so what I'm doing that time. So, but to be honest, this kind of thought just lasts for 10 seconds. Then, when I record the memories, I mean, the last night I stay under the starry galaxies. So, this kind of experience is quite unique. So, how wonderful experience I was experiencing. So it deserves, you know.
Mm-hmm. So that kept you going. What kind of help have you got from the locals along the way?
Yeah, there are countless of local people help me, and there's one time when I was cycling in the Wakhan Valley, which is between Afghanistan and Tajikistan. I was in so-called no man's land and have nowhere to go, and the shepherd hosted me. So, and also when I was cycling in the Sahara Desert in Mauritania, and the Malian Tuareg hosted me, and even he cannot understand French nor English, so, but there's no problem. We talk with smile and some simple greetings. And one of the most impressive one, when I was cycling in Burkina Faso, and I got really serious malaria, so powerless and vomit. So I was really poor at that time, and the local helped me, and he drove with his motorcycle and sent me to the hospital. That's why I could recover in 4-hour time. Yeah. So this is the most valuable treasure I have met on the road. I mean, the people.
Right. You were making a documentary out of your trip as you filmed along the way, and you mentioned that Africa is very different from how the continent is depicted in the media. What is Africa like through your eyes after spending significant time there and after this bicycle trip?
Actually, it's a land of hope, but still a long way to go. I mean, they have much younger generation, and they have I mean, abundant resources, but as well they have really corruption and poverty and illness, etc. But you know, it just takes time. And I mean, compared with Chinese, they are living much happier than us, despite of the economically poorness. So let's see. And in the future, they will be African. It's a continent of future.
So actually, you got something from them. That is very interesting indeed. We have more material wealth maybe, but in terms of happiness, it seems to be going down, which is a big question. What about the perception, their perception of the Chinese people? How do they look at you and the Chinese people in general?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Chinese are really working hard, and they are intelligent in doing business, and but there's some not so positive perspective. They may think that Chinese, they don't speak foreign language, and we just live in, I mean, in Chinese community. So that's probably what I think they may think about Chinese. And for me, as a traveler or bike tourer, maybe in their eyes I'm a little bit unique, maybe crazy, I don't know.
Tell us about the donation process when you returned to China. Why did you want to do that, and how much money have you raised? How are you going to give it back?
Well, for the purpose why I want to do this, because I want to do something for them, and since I have been there for 2 years and I have witnessed the situation, they are really in need. Okay, so for the donation process, I must say big thanks to the Upsonic team, because even when I was in Africa, I mean, they have contacted me, and they show really great interest for like to do this donation with me. So even yesterday they gave me a confirmed information about the village, about some details. So we will go back together in Benin, a remote village in the north of Benin. So we will do that.
What are you going to do specifically?
The end of February.
Right. What are you going to do specifically for the local villagers?
What we are planning right now is to digging a well. Actually, they are in urgent need of the water there, because this village is located near the park WW, and you know, there's some wild animals, and they have to walk 1.5 kilometers to the next village to bring the water. And when the flood came, so the road was flushed by the water, and they have to, to take water directly from the river, which is really in bad sanitation conditions. So it's really necessary to do that, to dig in a well. And also, there's no electricity, so I plan to do a charging station, the solar charging station for them, yeah.
Very meaningful work, a very, very important work for the local villages. However, how do you feel about what you can do as an individual to help change the situation? I mean, you can do a charging station. What about next year? How can you help the local villages make sure that this charging station or the electricity will continuously be provided?
Yeah, as an individual, I could do something limited, but since this is a small village with a population of 400 to 500, so we have $16,000 US for the donation, and digging a well and the charging system will cost like half of that, and we still have something, to the charging system. We need to change the battery every year, so we still have some fund to support. To make the charity plan to go longer, and also Upsonic is a company with good responsibility, and they promised me to do it longer, so we will do it at least 5-6 years
so you'll
until
be
they got better situation. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be continuously engaged in helping those people. Finally, now that you are going to cut this documentary, after that, what are you going to do?
You know, there's 2 ways of my plan. I mean, I'm really interested in doing international business, especially doing business with Africans. And if there's possibility, I think I will enter this industry. And in another hand, because you know, I'm how can I say, I'm a outdoor amateur. I mean, I want to shoot some outdoor film. So if it's possible, I also want to try to shoot outdoor film. Yeah.
All right. And looking back to that 1 year of outdoor survival and experiences in the most bizarre places in the world, what is your biggest takeaway? What has been the most meaningful part of the trip to you?
I mean, I could actually quote one saying from a documentary. You know, life is a river. There's a beginning, there's an end, and also there's thousands of different ways in between. So for me, I just want to fulfill the path of way with the different stories and just trust the process, you know. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, and all the very best luck for your future. That has been Yuan Jianglei, who spent 1 year to bicycle all the way back from the Western African country of Benin to his hometown in Zhejiang province in eastern China, a total of 16,000 kilometers, and he managed to raise $16,000 of donation to help the villagers back in Benin. So indeed, a very interesting story, and I'll think about it. That is it for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, as usual. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thank you for watching. You've got The Point.